Welcome along, guys. Welcome along to another success story from my success series. And today I'm interviewing a man who is certainly no stranger to success. He is best known as the financial advisor to the stars. He is one of the world's most sought after professional speakers. And he is also the host of the Sandro Forte podcast. And I was honored to be a guest on that show last year where I was interviewed. Now it's my turn to interview the man himself, Sandro Forte. Welcome along.
Thank you, Ed. And of course, the thing you missed off that CV is I'm also one of your clients.
I did forget to say that. Me and Sandro, of course, have been working together. I've been privileged to work with Sandro for the last, what is it now, a year and a half?
It's got to be at least a year and a half since you cold called me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, tapped you up on LinkedIn, and
you did.
Yeah, and here we are a year and a half later. Yeah. It's been certainly been a worthwhile journey. You've achieved some fantastic goals on your fitness journey, which we'll touch on as well. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Sandro Forte? Tell us a bit about what it is you do and a little bit about your background.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast, Ed. It's a real privilege to be asked to kind of share whatever it is I can add in terms of value to those that listen to your podcast. It's very nice of you to introduce me in the way that you did. I think all of the things that you've mentioned have kind of evolved from very humble beginnings, really. I come from quite a well-known family. So most people will know the name Forte as being quite synonymous with success in the hotel and hospitality business. My great uncle Charlie, great grandfather's brother, it's kind of complicated, started and built the world's biggest hotel group, Trust House Forte, that became Forte PLC, a listed company. And then, as many people know, it was bought over, hostile takeover by Granada in 1996. So I guess I was always predestined, if you like, to go into the family business, which was mainly restaurants, cafes, and different seaside resorts around the country, and also hotels, of course. But my father passed away when I was 9 years old. I was the eldest of 4 children. My mum was a widow at the age of 29. We stereotypically lived in a big house. Dad was very successful, ran 3 businesses, and every day was a summer holiday. We went on lots of trips away, didn't really want for very much. And within 2 years of my father's death, my mum was effectively bankrupt. She lost the house, the business she had no idea of how to run. So that was passed to another family member. And we ended up in a council house, effectively. So what I learned, I think, at that very young age, quite aside from my mum saying to me when I was 9 years old, when I learned of my father's death, "You're now the man of the house," which in many ways is a lovely label to have. It's great to be given that kind of responsibility. But I guess at the age of 9, it's probably a bit of a burden as well. So I grew up throughout all my teenage years, despite the fact my mum remarried a lovely, lovely guy who kind of became my shining light, really. He was my guide, educator, best friend in the world, lovely guy called Dave. Despite all that, I was working 2 hours before school, 2 hours after school, all my summer holidays, trying to keep what was left of that family business going. So by design or by accident, I don't know how it happened, I learned very early in my life that to succeed at anything, there has to be a few fundamentals, one of which is just work really, really hard. Get up early, put in the yards. And there's some analogies to things like personal training, which you know only too well. The people that create the best outcomes are usually the ones that put more effort into the process. So that was one thing I learned very early. I ended up in financial services quite by accident. I don't think anyone will ever say that they woke up one day when they were 12, 13 years old and said, "Do you know what? When I grow up, I'm going to be a financial advisor." So I ended up going to drama school, went to university, did an English and drama degree, decided I probably wasn't going to be a famous actor. By that time, I'd realized I wasn't going to be a famous golfer either, even though I captained the county in Somerset, which is where I come from originally, and probably wasn't going to be a National League hockey player, which I was quite good at as well. So having put all those things to one side and realized I probably wasn't going to be the best at any of those, I had to focus on paying off my student overdraft. So I ended up working for a family friend, kind of carried out an admin role. And then one day he came up to me and just said, you know what, I think you might have what it takes to be a good advisor. I'm like, no, absolutely not. Still thinking about being a policeman and all the things you think about then. And anyway, I think that was my big turning point, the big kind of epiphany for me, for two reasons. One was he wasn't a very nice guy, the man I worked for, and he had all the trappings of success, you know, the flashy car and the big house and lots of money, but it was at the expense of a lot of people. He didn't treat his clients very well. And as a consequence, I ended up picking up all the pieces. So I built these amazing relationships with some actually quite wealthy and influential people. And then 4 years later decided, in the year I got married, had twin children and bought my first house, that I may as well throw in starting my own business into the mix. And literally started from a converted garage, no contacts other than these clients I'd salvaged from the previous business, and just went for it, you know. And I'm a great believer that just taking some kind of positive action, even if you don't know the direction of travel, is always a really good starting point, because it very rarely leads to a negative outcome. And then the second thing was that my new career as an advisor gave me the opportunity to have a conversation with Dave, the new breadwinner in our family. And I did what most people do in these situations. I didn't apply the discipline to having a conversation. I didn't focus on the process, the things I can control. Again, the analogy, physical training, it's about putting in the reps, you know, putting in the hard yards and having the courage to do it. Getting up early in the morning, going to the gym on a cold, wet, windy morning when you don't really want to do it. Similar situation, just found all kinds of reasons not to have this conversation, which I knew would be difficult with my stepfather who didn't have very much money. And anyway, long story short, I kind of found the courage from somewhere. We had a conversation and he became my first client. Took out an insurance policy to cover his income if anything should happen to him. And within 2 months of him becoming my first client in December 1991, he was dead. Just like my dad all those years before. My father died from lung cancer. Dave passed away from stomach cancer. It was really aggressive. And the irony was that he'd had cancer all that time throughout the whole insurance process. They just never picked it up at the medical examination. And I reflected after that on the extreme damage that my procrastination could have done on my family versus the amazing financial outcome that was created as a result of him becoming my first client. And that was the watershed moment in my life, Ed. That was the moment which I thought, you know what, no more excuses. I'm going to give everything absolutely 100%, and I'm going to stop worrying about the outcome, because that's usually what stops us taking action. Yeah. Which then leads, you know, to a degree of success. I don't know what success is. I haven't ever determined what it is, because it's different things to different people. But that's right, yeah. In relative terms, my business became known as successful and certainly very reputable. I started to acquire clients in the sporting space, celebrities, a couple of royal families, bizarrely. And then that led to a number of opportunities to speak on the what was the Life Insurance Association circuit. That led to a national conference. That led to a world conference. And then since then, for the last 20 years, I've been picking up speaking engagements all over the world, which I kind of do part-time. That led to the writing of a book. And then 2 years ago, to the day almost, the podcast was born, because obviously by this time, I've acquired all these amazing contacts and clients, all of whom have got something brilliant to say on success and how they achieve things and how they overcame certain challenges in life. And that led to the point where I met you. So that's kind of the briefest version I can give you of my life.
Wow. And what a journey you've been on. You must have learned a lot along the way. One thing I could really resonate there with you is you fell into your profession by accident. I can certainly resonate with that. I never grew up thinking I want to be a personal trainer or I want to get into the fitness industry. You know, for me, I was, you know, the least sportiest of people could have ever met at school, you know, and it's just totally by accident I fell into this. But yeah, you must have learned a lot along the way. If you could turn back time, go back 25 years to when you were starting out, you started out at a very young age. What advice would you give to your younger self looking back now?
I've thought about this a lot, because that's a question I ask a lot of my podcast guests. I frame it a slightly different way and say, you know, if you had a younger version of yourself asking you for a direction in life, you know, a mantra to live by, whatever, what would it be? And everyone comes up with something different. I mean, there's no doubt at all, despite the fact that I think I've always worked exceptionally hard, not taken any prisoners. And what I mean by that, just not made any excuses. I think that, as bizarre as this seems, I would aim even higher. I'd set that bar even higher, because one of the things that I've never really agreed with is, we all hear about SMART goals, right? And everyone says SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timeline. The problem for me with SMART goals, Ed, is that if you set realistic goals, you only ever achieve the things that are expected of you. And the expectations are generally based on somebody else's experience. So, give you an example. When you're young, you say to mum and dad, when they ask you the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, Ed? And Ed says, because he doesn't think of anything, has got no filter at that moment. He doesn't think about what's realistic. Ed just says, oh, I want to be an astronaut or a nuclear physicist or something, that's off the charts ambitious. And you tend to get a condescending pat on the head, and they say, oh, you might want to set your sights a little bit lower. And what I've learned in about life is that people don't fail because they aim too high. People fail because they aim too low. So if I had my time again, I would set my sights so much higher, and not allow the paradigms, those belief systems that are created based on everyone else's experiences, to stop me doing the things I would have otherwise have done. I'm 52 years old now. I'm probably 10 years behind where I would have loved to have been if I had my time over again. So, I mean, I'm making up lost ground, I think, because I'm a great believer that, discipline and regret are both painful, but if you don't have the first one in your life, you're guaranteed to get the second one. So, yeah, if I had it all again, it would be, work harder, make more connections, get out of bed an hour earlier, make fewer excuses, and set my bar really, really high. When I was 21, I remember thinking, I'd love to be retired when I'm 56. But I don't know where 56 came from. It was just a number based on the minimum retirement age at that time. But that's my point. Everyone just assumed that 55, 56 was the time you'd retire. Why it couldn't have been 45 or 35, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. We are influenced by other people, and we allow ourselves sometimes to set the bar just a little bit too low.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree. I think your environment you put yourself in is very important, because that could work in a positive way as well. If you're surrounded by people with limiting beliefs, then you're going to kind of sell yourself short on what you believe is possible. But then if you surround yourself with winners and achievers, then you're going to see things, you're going to be around people that are achieving to a higher standard, and that's going to make you push yourself a little bit further. So it can work one of two ways. That's one thing I've certainly learned over the years, because I was one of those people as well. You only know what you know. You only know like what your parents teach you. Like you said, set your expectations a little bit lower, son. When you say you want to be an astronaut, you listen to your parents, but why not? What's stopping you? Has it been done before? Yes. Why not me then?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And that's the thing, when I say to people, I did a presentation recently, and my first question to the audience was, make a list of all the reasons why you haven't achieved as much as you would have liked to have achieved in 2020. And you see them all writing down what they think are reasons, but they're not reasons at all. They're just excuses. And the reality is, you've only got to look around you, do a 360 scan of your environment, and you will see people that form membership of what I call the discouragement club. They are the people who spend their entire life trying to stop other people achieving success, because they're just built for skepticism and depression, and the glass is half empty rather than half full. The reality is choice, and we all have a choice as to whether we succeed or fail in life. You can pull the duvet over your head and wait for the brighter weather. That's a metaphor. Or you can curl up and or you can jump out of bed and take the world by the scruff of the neck. Everyone's got the same choice. We're all. I know, putting aside certain circumstances, the bottom line is we are all built the same way. We all have the same opportunities. We all have the same challenges. That's another thing I've learned, that people who have done super, super well, that's just a fascia. Behind it, there are so many trials and tribulations and challenges and bumps in the road and moments where they felt like giving it all up. But the people who achieve any kind of successful outcome, let's not call it success, let's call it successful outcome. Anybody that gets to where we aspire to get to ourselves, they've just waded through, you know, all the difficulties that many of us just, when we get there, we just go, oh no, I've had enough now. I'm not prepared to put in the extra couple of reps, which are really, really painful. And the reality, Ed, is that success is not comfortable. You know, if you think that success is, then don't put yourself through the pain of it, because most of the people I know that have been successful in life have lived in a constant state of discomfort. You just got to choose whether you want to do it or not.
Yeah. You can be in discomfort and pain anyway. There's the discomfort of going on and achieving your goals, or there's the discomfort of not achieving your goals. So I know where I'd rather be. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your fitness journey now. So another area you've been very successful in. What made you? Why did you turn to fitness? How long have you been training for, and why did you turn to fitness?
I think there is a direct correlation between physical fitness and mental fitness. I've always believed that. Long before mental illness has kind of come to become a hot topic.
Yeah.
But I go back to when I played county golf. You know, I was 13 when I started playing county golf. It's one of the first things that Dave encouraged me to do. So I've always been quite sporty, but actually, a bit like you, Ed, the one thing we have in common, which you may not know, is I was a bit of a porker when I was a kid. And in fact, I used to be called some awful names. So I was carrying quite a lot of puppy fat up until I was about 15, 16 years of age. Got involved, was quite a good hockey player, got involved in hockey, and that was really when the weight started to fall off. So I've always been aerobically quite fit since a young age, but I'd never really done any weight training or kind of sought to, add muscle or build myself up or whatever. And I've never aspired to be, muscle bound or anything like that. That's not the point I'm making. But I think as I started to get older, I became more aware of a need to be mentally fit. And I think that sometimes if you can get, I don't know about everybody else, when I go into the gym, it's hard work, really hard work. And I'm probably caked in sweat at the end of it. And there will be moments in that 1 hour process that I think, what the heck am I doing? Why am I paying Ed for this misery? But at the end of it, I feel amazing. It's almost like a form of therapy. Bear in mind, I'm extraordinarily busy. My day, everything seems to kind of merge into one. To be able to lift yourself out of that environment and just shut off for an hour, you can't answer the phone, you can't do emails, you can't be disturbed. You're just in that moment. And I think that is amazing for mental fitness as well as your body, longevity, and I've lost a father and a stepfather to cancer. So I'm probably more aware than most of the need for good health, eating well. I love a bar of chocolate. I like a glass of wine. I like a beer. But I have a relationship now with all of that there that I choose to do that as rewards. If I put in a really good fitness session, have a glass of wine at the end of the week to reward myself. And I think that's a really important part of the process. So I think ultimately I started training with a guy down in the West Country called Ben, probably, 20 years ago. Ben's terrific. I think for the first probably 15 years, I just played around with it. Went into the gym, the classic 10 reps, followed by another 10 reps, followed by another 10 reps at a weight that wasn't very taxing. And then I'd move on. And so, I had a decent physique, not great, decent physique. And I kind of maintained it for about 15 years. And then the moment that, you contacted me, and it was literally just a random, hi, my name's Ed, and then when I saw the pictures of you, I was like, I want to look like that. And that was my new goal. It was kind of, well, I don't want to look like, that's probably unrealistic, but ultimately I wanted to get fitter. I wanted to look in the mirror and feel more confident as I got older and things start to sag and gravity takes over. So you kind of want to have this, do everything you can to arrest the body's development. And again, as I said before, the analogy is you either pull the duvet over your head and think, do you know what, I'll do it tomorrow, or not at all, or you spring out of bed and go, you know what, to heck with it. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. I'm doing it anyway. And then actually what happens is, as you start getting used to it, because I am a genuine believer that you can teach people successful outcomes in exactly the same way as we've all learned to walk, talk, swim, ride a bicycle. And there is a subconscious process that you go through. And so then I just kind of wanted to take it to the next level. And now it's become a challenge at the age of 52, where people are going, well, you know, kind of the body, you're not going to, you know, I haven't got as much testosterone. The body's not going to let you do what you could have done many years ago. And I'm like, this is like a full-on challenge for me now, to try and improve my physique rather than just let, you know, circumstance take over. So yeah, the last sort of 5 years, I've become a bit more serious about it. And I will now subconsciously drag myself in. And there are days I don't want to go into the gym, don't get me wrong. But subconsciously, it's become a habit to the point where I will get into the gym and do something every single day. And ultimately, when you come to tackle a challenge in life, you've got to draw a metaphorical line down the middle of the page. And on the left-hand side, you've got the positives. And on the right-hand side, you've got the negatives. If the positives outweigh the negatives, you do it. But what I'm saying is you will never tackle a task and it's only positive. There's always going to be a trade-off. Right. There's always going to be a sacrifice you have to make. And I don't mind saying to you, there are times it is miserable, you know, in the sense that it's hard and it's painful and I don't want to do any more. You know, there have been times 10 minutes before the end of the sessions, I'm like, I really want to say to Ed, can we call it a day now? But that's not where the benefit comes. When it gets uncomfortable, you don't quit.
That's when you just begin.
And that is actually a veiled compliment to you, Ed, because if it wasn't painful, if it wasn't uncomfortable, you wouldn't be doing your job properly.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It's the reps that start hurting. That's when you start counting, isn't it? They're the ones that count.
It is. Yeah.
And you talked about the mental benefits as well. You know, having that hour out of your day between, you know, work and the mental benefits of not just the physical benefits of, you know, being in great shape, health as well, but the mental benefits of switching off. Do you see like fitness and working out? Do you see it as part of your working day? Do you see it as part of your business?
I think it's, yeah, I've never really thought of it like that, but you are absolutely right. You know, that little oasis in the middle of a day, some people step outside their office and they have a cigarette and that's their chance to relax. I'm not advocating smoking, by the way. Some people will have a lunch break where they will switch everything off or people meditate, for example. We all do different things. Mine just happens to be some hard graft in the gym. It's what works for me. The mental fitness thing isn't just about being more alert, though that's one benefit. Sometimes it's just about feeling better in a set of clothes or being a bit more confident, you know, not having some of the self-esteem issues I know people have got. Because when you look good, you feel good most of the time. So I don't think we should ever underestimate the importance of fitness. And I know more people are getting to the gym these days, as you know, memberships are on the rise. But it's a sad fact that the majority of people who join a gym at the beginning of January, I think statistically, the numbers are still half of them have left by something like the 12th of the month. And by by the end of the month, 75% have quit. So it just goes to show, you know, it's not easy. It's not comfortable. But that's what separates the winners from the losers in life, unfortunately.
You're absolutely right. And as you said earlier, it's about doing, you know, everyone has the same challenges, but it's just about the ones who are willing to take on those challenges and overcome them. Whereas, you know, a big percentage will quit at that point. And so it's about being able to go through. Arnold described it as going through the pain barrier. It's the 11th rep, the 12th rep, the 13th rep. You know, going through that pain barrier. That's what makes, like you say, a winner. That's what makes a champion.
Well, just to one of your little techniques, and I'm sure it's deliberate, but for those of you listening, Ed's kind of got this really this mean streak where he says, because he knows it works on me, and he says, 12 to 15 reps, knowing full well that I'm not going to quit at 12 reps. So it's those 3 extra ones that he knows full well are going to really hurt. But he's mentioned 2 parameters. One is kind of like the low achiever end, and one is the high achiever end. And I can't possibly quit at 12.
Yeah. No, it works well for you. It works well for you. You always, I don't think you've ever stopped it. If I said 12 to 15, you always do 15.
No, I've never stopped. I've never stopped at the low number ever.
I can tell you to do 100 or 200 reps, you'll keep going.
Yeah, I would. Well, I mean, until I physically fell over. But you know, that's another point that is worth making here. That, you know, it's a choice. You can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way. But as I mentioned before, any kind of action, any move in a forward direction is going to produce a result, right, to a greater or lesser extent. And that's what most people are not willing to do. We're talking about, you know, the extra yards in the gym, but actually just 10 minutes in the gym. I know you're a great advocate of getting started on a process, doing 10 minutes, doing 15 minutes, doing a long walk, counting, sticking an Apple Watch on, counting 10,000 steps, even if you're confined to your home, just walking around, things like that. And a lot of people, going back to what I said earlier, the reason why so many people suffer from this inertia, this ability to take positive action, is because they focus on the long term, the big audacious goal, and they kind of go, oh my, you know, I can never see myself achieving that. But if you can just focus on the first 10 minutes and do 10 minutes a day, then it becomes 15, then it becomes 20, and then eventually you get to an hour. And then once you do that regularly, I've got to a point in my life now, I cannot imagine not going into the gym for some time every day. In fact, I think I'd probably become miserable if that happened. Yeah. So this is about habit forming, and habit forming does not need to be a painful experience. No.
It's about breaking down those barriers. Like you say, you can make this a mammoth task and you're going to just talk yourself out of it and make an excuse, or you can just take that first very simple step. And like I say, I'm a very big advocate of helping people take that first step, you know, minimizing the barriers, minimizing any reason to make an excuse. There's no such thing as a bad workout, whether you beast yourself in the gym for an hour or you go for a 10-minute walk. You know, anything you can, any positive action you can do is going to move the needle forward. So agree with you on that. Very big believer in that. And you mentioned as well about at the age of 52, people will say to you, you can't change your body at 52. Your testosterone levels aren't what they used to be at 25. And again, it's just going back to what you said earlier, that you can either let that define you can either kind of get, you know, consumed by those beliefs, or you can defy the odds and, you know, do it anyway. And, you know, you certainly are defining the odds at the age of 52.
And I'm physically fitter than I've ever been in my life. And for the first time in my life, I've actually got a six-pack. So, you know, again, if I had allowed my training regime to be dictated by other people's expectations, or maybe their own experiences, which might say, well, at the age of 52, you know, apart from just staying in shape, you know, getting some aerobic exercise, you're wasting your time going to the gym every day for an hour, Sandro. I mean, if I'd listened to that, I'd have been a couch potato by now. So I've learned that there is really, you can't live your life to other people's expectations. I heard somebody the other day saying, and I know this isn't related to what we're saying, but it's a good example of how humans work. Somebody from another country that was on a seminar that I was giving said, well, in our culture, we do things slightly differently. But culture is just a habit that has been adopted by a big group of people, normally a country's population. And they call it culture, but it isn't culture at all. Well, it is culture. It's called culture. But culture comes from lots of people doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's called a habit in my book. So the reality is, somebody in Bulgaria says, we don't do it that way in the UK, in Bulgaria, we do it differently to the UK. I find that very difficult to accept, because culture comes from somebody having the courage to create a new way of doing things, like Steve Jobs did, like Richard Branson did. You know, all these great examples of people who disrupted an industry, a market, a country, a belief system. And they are the people who ultimately achieve great success, are the ones who actually go, you know what, the way we're doing it, with the way we've all been doing it for centuries, let's change it. Let's do something different. So this whole idea that at the age of 52, you can't get into the best shape of your life. I mean, I've proven to myself, it's not for anybody else's benefit, I've proven it to myself, that that's simply not true.
Indeed, indeed. So what advice would you give someone thinking about getting in shape, whether they're, a youngster or similar age to yourself, whether they run a business, don't have much time? What advice would you give to them in starting their journey?
Well, the first thing I'd say, I've always had a sweet tooth. My mum, bless her, she handed me that down through her genes. So I love a bar of chocolate.
Who doesn't?
I love it. And the one thing I was going to do is I was never going to give up the things I like, because then that just becomes really miserable. If you're going to live off dust, as many people do, they 7 meals a day and they carry pots of beans around them and everything's really bland and tasteless. I'm like, no, that's not my idea of enjoying the, I know you did. But then if you're doing competitions, you need to do that kind of stuff. I accept that. But for a mere mortal like me, I'm not going to carry Tupperware pots of beans around with me all day long. So I've got a relationship now with food where I go, okay, if I do an hour's, say, run in the gym, I do 10, 15K and I put in the yards, I know I can have a couple of chunks of chocolate or a glass of wine or whatever. And I'm prepared to sacrifice one for the other, trade off, I guess is the right expression.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is it doesn't have to be, it can be physically uncomfortable in the gym. You don't have to add another layer of discomfort and misery by giving up all the things that you enjoy. So that's the first thing I'd say. And the MyFitnessPal work that we did for a while got me into the habit of watching what I was eating. So I became aware of what was good, what was not good, what I could have, what I couldn't have, what I could have more of, what I could have less of. And again, once you form that habit and understanding, then I don't have to use MyFitnessPal because I know where my 170 grams is coming from of protein, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is just start a process. As I said before, a lot of people go, oh, I haven't got an hour to go to the gym. I hear that excuse all of the time. Really busy, haven't got an hour. Well, do 10 minutes, do 15 minutes. You don't even have to get changed into a gym kit to do some exercise. But I do recommend that you get trained by someone. And the main reason for that is accountability is the thing that will maintain that habit. If you simply say, I'm going to do 15 minutes a day, you'll do it for 2 or 3 days. Life will get in the way and you'll probably stop doing it. That's not the way to create a new habit. So, invest some time and invest some money if you have to in a personal trainer. And I know at this stage we're all going to point towards Ed because he's a good personal trainer, but whoever you use, geographically.
No plugs from me.
But whether it's, we've learned now that you can have a great personal training session on Zoom. I mean, that's what we do.
Technology, yeah.
Yeah. So again, a lot of people have spent all of this year going, oh, well, I can't see people face to face anymore. It's a disaster. Well, on the flip side, on the reverse side of every challenge in life, there is an opportunity. And now technology has given us the opportunity to have arguably more training sessions than we would have done if I'd had to travel all the way down to the gym in London, giving up travel time either side. So the reality is, with all that we've got at our disposal, invest a bit of time and money in yourself, and start the process. If you love it, fantastic. If you hate it, at least you can look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I didn't spend all my life making excuses. I've been through a process. I don't like the outcome. Fair enough. But going back to that discipline regret thing, don't ever be one of those people who on your deathbed looks back over your life and starts the next sentence with the word, I wish.
Yeah. And on that note, Sandro, I can't thank you enough for joining me in this interview. I think you'll all agree, some real sort of nuggets of wisdom there and wise words from a man who's been there, done it. And Sandro, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today, and look forward to sharing this video with both mine and your network. I know we've got a lot of mutual connections, so hopefully it will provide a ton of value. And thanks once again. How can before you go, how can, if people watching this and they're not connected with you, how can they get in touch? How can they connect with you?
Well, the podcast is worth listening to. That's not to trump yours, because yours is great, but just such a diverse range of people, including you, of course, Ed, in the library, so they can go and find that. So it's the Sandro Forte podcast, or at Sandro's podcast on the Apple podcast store, and on Spotify as well. I've got a book called Dare to Be Different. You can get hold of that on Amazon, or just contact me through you if they want a copy. And then, because I have such a weird name, Sandro Forte, on pretty much every social media channel, you can just find me by tapping in at Sandro Forte. The only exception, I think, being Instagram, where it's the real Sandro Forte, because somebody stole my name and I still haven't tracked down who it is.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Brilliant. So go check out Sandro. Make sure you connect. And yeah, thanks once again, Sandro. And we'll catch up on our next session.
See you in the gym. All right. Thanks, Ed.
See you soon.
Take care.
Care.